Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video, and the subject of today's video is going to be basically me going through all starting small forwards in the NBA next season and ranking them from the worst 30th to the best number 1. Now I realize that you guys might think, well, this guy isn't really their best small forward, but I'm going off of who I think will be the starter for the team, not necessarily like the best small forward. So at certain positions, you might think like, well, they actually have this other guy on their roster who's better, so this isn't really accurate. Well, I'm ranking it the way I am because certain guys are going to be coming off the bench. But without further ado, let's get into it. So at number 30, I have Danuel House for the Houston Rockets. I think he will start over Eric Gordon. I think Eric Gordon's going to continue in his six-man role. I think that Danuel House is an okay player. I don't think he does anything particularly well, and I think this is more a result. Him starting is more a result of Houston's lack of depth at small forward rather than him being particularly good. Really, if things were going as they should, should be a bench player. At number 29, I have Troy Brown Jr. for the Wizards. He was a rookie last year, very inexperienced, very raw still. He got some playing time, and I think he'll get actually a ton of playing time this year just based on the lack of depth for the Wizards at small forward. And they don't really have necessarily any option that's better than him. I just think that he'll be very raw, so he won't be all that good this year because he's still very new to playing in the NBA. At 20, I have Cedi Osman for the Cavaliers. A guy that can give you 10 points per game on decent shooting from three, but he's, again, still pretty inefficient from the field overall and not really a defender, so I have him parked here at 28 for the Cavaliers. At 27, I have Tony Snell for the Detroit Pistons. Detroit is very lacking on the wings. They have decent bigs in Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, and they have good point guards, but not much as far as wings. Tony Snell can hit a knockdown jump shot, and he can defend pretty good, but beyond that, he can't create his own shot or anything, so he's parked here at 27. At 26, I have Glenn Robinson III for the Warriors, who actually played for the Pistons last year. He can dunk really well. He's not a very good defender, and he has some shooting ability, so he's definitely better offensively than defensively, but still a guy who you'd preferably have coming off of the bench rather than starting for your team. At 25, I have Mikal Bridges for the Phoenix Suns. A good player. I think a guy who's, again, really young, like better than Troy Brown. It's going to be his sophomore year as well, Mikal Bridges, that is. And he still has a lot to learn. He's not a good defender at this point. He is a decent shooter, but again, just needs to work on his game all around before he can get higher on a list like this. At 24, I have Nicholas Batum. Definitely past his prime. Still a slightly above average defender, and offensively he can hit some jump shots, but his percentages and efficiency are way down from what they used to be. So overall, not great in that department, and he's basically washed up at this point, and that's why he's down here at number 24. At number 23, I have Kevin Knox of the New York Knicks. Again, another very young guy, very raw. He basically was underwhelming last year in that he was an average to mediocre defender, and he was basically the same on offense. On his best days, he was an average offensive player. On his worst days, he was mediocre to bad. He has a jump shot in there somewhere, but it's not fully developed to what it could be yet, really. And his off-the-dribble shot creation still needs quite a bit of work, so he's down here at 23. At 22, Jonathan Isaac for the Orlando Magic. A guy who is, again, pretty raw, still pretty young. I think he's only like 23 right now. And he does a few things well. He is a decent defender, and he is athletic and can dunk it really well and is decent in transition. But really not much shot creation like off the dribble. A guy who reminds me a lot of like a young Corey Brewer. That's sort of a good comp for him. But, a guy who's still even, I wouldn't necessarily just want to start, or not a starter caliber, more like a decent sixth man to me rather than necessarily a starter. But he will be starting for this Orlando team, I think. 21, Joe Harris. Doesn't have anything much on defense besides good height at 6'8", but offensively he's a really good knockdown shooter, and he can't create his own shot, but his knockdown shooting is really good, coming off of screens or fading out to corners and stuff like that. So Joe Harrison here at 21. At 20, I have DeAndre Hunter. I was sort of on the fence about where to put him in this ranking, but I feel like this is pretty fair for the number 4 overall pick. He's a pretty good defender. His offensive game is still we don't really know yet. It could be decent, or it could be really bad and really underdeveloped this year. But I think one thing's for sure, he will be a pretty good defender. He has the makings of a pretty good offensive player. He should be able to shoot it a little bit, and he should be able to eventually, hopefully, get a pretty good off the dribble creation sort of thing going. So right now I have him at 20, but he could move up or down depending throughout the season. Let's see here. At 19, I have Kent Bazemore. He is an above average defender. He's a good shooter. He can't really create much off the dribble, but the Trailblazers are not really looking for that for him because they have CJ and Dame to do that. They need him to sit in the corner and make threes, or come off of screens and make threes, and for him to be able to defend the opposing small forward. And he can do both of those things, so I got him in here at 19. At 18, I have Rondae Hollis-Jefferson for the Toronto Raptors. Very athletic, pretty strong, good defender, good rebounder. He can create a little bit off the dribble, can get his own shot off the dribble sometimes, but not a shooter whatsoever. That really holds him back. If he had a really good jump shot, he'd be a lot higher on this list, but very athletic, good defender, good rebounder. Those are his selling points. At 17, I have Jay Crowder. Similar to Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, that he's a good defender. He's decent at rebounding for his 6'6" stature. He is a really good shooter at times. He can be a little streaky, but on his good days, he's a very good shooter. Can't really create off the dribble for himself, but his ability to shoot and defend are what make him a pretty good, reliable two-way player, and he will definitely be starting for the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's see here. 16, I have Gordon Hayward. A guy who kind of reminds me of Jay Crowder a bit in what he is nowadays. He is a decent, I'd say a decent to slightly above average defender, and he used to have the ability to create shots off the dribble. He still has it now, but it's way less efficient. Same thing with his shooting. He used to be a really good shooter, and now he can shoot it still, but just way less efficiently. He can kind of do a little bit of everything for you, but just at slightly below good. More, he's average at everything, but good at nothing anymore. Hopefully he bounces back, and if he does, he can move way higher up this list. But for now, he is slotted in here at 16, and that's about what he is, just an average NBA small forward at this point. At 15, I have Justice Winslow. I'm putting him in here sort of on good faith. I hope that he continues to improve his ball handling abilities, shot creation. He's actually a very good distributor in that he did play point guard at stretches for Miami last year, but I think that he'll really more be slotting in at small forward for this team. Very athletic, above average defender. The shot is not there. He's not a good jump shooter, but he can do everything else relatively well, especially I want to stress his playmaking ability is above average for the position. I could see him averaging 6 to 7 assists a game for this year, and I wouldn't be shocked by that. Okay, at 14, I have Will Barton. This guy, I would like to. So I'm kind of transitioning into a tier of players where it's I would for sure want them starting for my team. Will Barton's undersized for being a small forward. He's 6'6". He's really much more of a shooting guard, but because of Gary Harris existing, he's at small forward for the Nuggets. He is very good offensively, a little bit to be desired defensively. He's very athletic, so that helps him on both ends of the court. But just the height hinders him on defense, and he's just an average defender, but offensively, he's I'd say above average. He can do basically some of everything for you and do it well. He can be a good shooter at times. He's a little streaky, but he can be a good shooter, and he can create off the dribble for himself. He can penetrate. He can dish it a little bit. So he can do a little bit of everything on offense, and I think that's pretty important for a team like Denver that has so many offensive weapons to get the ball around to that he can distribute a little bit helps that. Okay, let's see here. We're moving up to 13 now, which is a guy who I find to be very underrated, which is T.J. Warren. I like T.J. Warren. I think he's a guy that doesn't get enough credit. Last year, I think he shot like between 45 to 50% from the field and like 40% from three, which are really underrated stats for a guy that no one pays attention to. They're very good numbers. He averaged also like 19 points per game last year, and no one talked about him, mainly because Phoenix was bad, but he himself played relatively well. Not much on defense, but on offense, he's a very gifted player. He can shoot it, as I just mentioned, with his three-point percentage, and he can create shots for himself off the dribble. So there you go. That's basically all you need on offense. Let's see here. At number 12, I have Harrison Barnes. Essentially, copy and paste everything I just said for T.J. Warren, but for Harrison Barnes. Those two guys remind me of each other a lot. The only difference being Harrison Barnes is about an inch or two taller and is a little bit of a better rebounder and a little bit more athletic. But everything else pretty similar. Harrison's a slightly worse shooter, but again, very similar games except for a 2-inch to 1-inch height difference. Let's see here. At number 11, I have Otto Porter. A guy who, at his best, could be like 20 points per game, averaging 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and a first-team all-defense, I think. But at his worst, he's going to average 10 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, going to be an average defender, and is going to shoot very inefficiently. So he has a high-risk, high-reward sort of player. But as I say again, on his best days, he is one of the best NBA small forwards out there. Like 2 years ago with Washington, I think he shot like 50% from the field, like 44% from three, and averaged like 15 points per game, and was a really good defender. So I think that Otto Porter is still in there, and I think on a Chicago team where it might be more of like we're all young players, we're all more willing to share the ball, I think that might come out more, and we'll see a really good side of Otto Porter. So I'm very optimistic about Otto Porter in this ranking. At number 9, I have number 10, I have Robert Covington for the Timberwolves. A very good spot-up shooter. First team all-defense 2 years ago when he was healthy. Last year, he missed like 50 games, so I'm basically just copying and pasting what he was 2 years ago to this spot right here, but a very, very good player. And if he can just develop a little bit more shot creation for himself, he would jump up this list even higher. Very impressive for a guy that came from the D-League. Okay, let's see here. Number 9, Bojan Bogdanovic. A very impressive player based on what I saw last year. Can shoot the three-pointer really well. Can create his own shot now, which is something that he really ended up developing last year a lot with Victor Oladipo out. He got the chance to do a lot more shot creation for himself and for others. I'm much more comfortable with him handling the ball routinely than I was a year ago. This opportunity in Indiana he got really showed that he has the ability to be a very good offensive player. He averaged like 18.5 points per game last year, which is really surprising when you think about it. I think he's a really good fit in Utah, helping space that floor, and really, will probably be their second leading scorer this year. I would not be surprised whatsoever. Just with his game, he can score from every level of the court. Defensively, he's average. Nothing much there, but offensively, very much what this league is idolizing right now. Good shooting and can create off the dribble. At 8, I have Brandon Ingram, who I am, again, like Otto Porter, I am thinking optimistic with Brandon Ingram. He isn't a great shooter yet, but he is a gifted scorer. He's a lot like Andrew Wiggins, I find. But again, like naturally, he's just a very good scorer. Defensively, he's average to, when he's not giving effort, a below average defender. But when he's dialed in, he's an average to, depending on his, well, if you factor in his height and his reach, he has the potential to be an above average to good defender. But as of right now, with the effort that he gives on defense, he's only average. But again, a very naturally gifted scorer on offense, despite not being a great shooter. Okay, let's see here. Number 7, Danilo Gallinari. Let me get it out of the way. Nothing on defense. He's not going to give you really anything. But on offense, he is basically like a better Bojan Bogdanovic to me. He can shoot. He can create some off the dribble for himself. And he's 6'10", which gives him a height advantage at his position. At 6, I have Chris Middleton, a very good spot-up shooter, one of the best in the league. Kind of like a poor man's Klay Thompson, but that's not even fair because Chris Middleton was an all-star last year. But he doesn't create much off the dribble, but he is not a very good, because I don't think he'd ever make an all-defensive team, but he is a good NBA defender, and he is a very good shooter, and offensively he is a threat. Not off the dribble, but in every other way, as far as being basically a good spot-up shooter, coming off of screens, being a catch-and-shoot guy. At 5, I have Tobias Harris. Can score in every which way, and do it well. He shoots 40% from 3. He shoots like 50% from the field. He can score off the dribble and create his own shots. He can spot up for 3s. He can come off of screens for 3s. And on defense, he's above average. Not necessarily good, but above average for sure. But offensively, he can kind of go every which way with his game, so that's very impressive to me. At 4, I have DeMar DeRozan. I do think he will be starting at 4 for the Spurs next year with how their lineup is shaking out. On offense, he can basically do everything but shoot 3s really well. He's a below-average 3-point shooter, but on offense, he can basically do everything else. Not a great distributor, but still decent at it. And then defensively, he's average. But yeah, offensively, he can create his own shot masterfully. He's got a great mid-range game. He can penetrate and get to the basket really well. He's not a guy that you can kick it to the corner and expect him to hit 3s regularly, but everything else on offense, he's got it down. At 3 here, I have Luka Doncic for the Mavericks. I think the sky's the limit for this dude. He's nothing on defense, but offensively, I think that right now you could argue he's I have him at 3 here. I think he's definitely a top 3 small forward next year with how he'll develop. I expect him to put up averages of 8 rebounds, 8 assists, and 24 points per game. He's only going to continue to get better. He's already an efficient scorer and efficient shooter, and he can rebound and distribute the ball very well already as a rookie last year. At 2, I have the King, LeBron James. I expect him to put up his usual averages of 27, 8, and 8. Probably shoot 50% from the field and 35% from 3 like he normally does. Again, he's an above average defender to good defender when he's really dialed in, like in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he'll be average to well below average depending on his effort level on any given night. Offensively, he's a savant, and he's going to just play his game. And we all know enough about LeBron's game. I don't have to go into a ton of details, but obviously great at getting to the rim, great at distributing, and has just a high basketball IQ and ability to see things on the court that others don't see very well. Number 1, Kawhi Leonard. Phenomenal defender, phenomenal offensively, as he proved in the playoffs last year. He's a good shooter. He can create off the dribble. His only weakness on offense is he lacks a great presence for distribution. He ball handles, but he isn't great at finding guys necessarily. But everything else on offense he does well. As I say, scoring off the dribble, isolation, mid-range post-ups, low post-ups, shooting, corner 3s, top of the key 3s, anything. Basically, he just feels like a guy that you can throw the ball to and say, get us a shot, and he can do it. And then defensively, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, who's still healthy and in his prime. He's a great defender, and he will probably be first-team all-defense if he's healthy. That's all I got, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting. Feel free to leave your rankings below, and I'd love to hear from you. Again, have a good day, and see you next time. Bye.